Welcome to our Vector Forum 23. We are today already in the 5th installation. I'm glad to have with me Goetz Dietrich of Zeiss. Goetz will introduce himself afterwards, so I keep it short for the moment. My name is Christof Ebert, responsible in Vector for the consulting activities worldwide, and I will make a brief introduction to the forum, the topic for those who are new. Maybe not many, but still to be fair for those who joined the first time. And then the major part would be with Goetz presenting about the experiences in Zeiss on this very interesting topic of software production for high precision systems. So for now, a brief introduction on why we have this forum, who we are, what's going on, especially for those who listen on the recorded version. So this is completely recorded with a Q&A. For those of you who are live, welcome. You are able to put questions into the Teams channel so that we will later on address them. Vector is about 4,000 persons worldwide, and we are active in most of the regions with industry. We serve initially on automotive, but today in many related segments. Amongst them is medical, aerospace, industrial automation, and that's also how we went into contact with Zeiss. Our Vector Forum looks on an annual basis into key topics, and the key topics are identified based on what we get as a feedback from our customers. And you see it was quite wide variety in our 4 portfolio topics of trust, technology, transformation, and training. Convergence, that is our topic this year, and I will come back what it really means. Before that, a few useful things. We have this introduction with about 10 minutes. We have a presentation which is about 30 minutes. We have the Q&A with about 15 minutes, and we have a closing. So target is to have everything in 60 minutes. That was possible in the past 4 installations, so I'm sure we managed this time as well. If you use the browser version of Teams, or the Teams in the browser could sometimes give technical problems, so better to have the app installed. If there is a problem, and Microsoft had these kind of problems already this year, that the cloud services don't work, then we move on into WebEx. We have a parallel fallback installed. You would get a mail in your mailbox which you used for registering, and then we just move to that other channel, and you will find in that mail then a new link into WebEx. Of course, we trust this will work. So far, we were lucky, if you want, and there was no problem with it. Questions on the presentation in the Teams chat box. You can vote on existing questions, and I will later on select those with the highest votes to bring forward to Goetz Dietrich. And obviously, those who join remotely don't have this possibility. For those who registered, we will send also a mail about a quiz which you can attend, and we will, after the forum, that is 2 weeks from now, also send a mail with a questionnaire where you can give overall feedback. As usual in meetings, and that applies also in the hybrid and in the online mode, look where you can escape in the case of an emergency. We stick to the timing of the 60 minutes. You will get a PDF afterwards for those who registered. We have all of that online available with the link which you already registered. The chat is for your questions. And from here onwards, don't forget that you also need to think about yourself and your being aware what's going on. So have a coffee if you feel it's helpful. So let's go into the trends which we see and which also drive this topic. From our survey, which we do on an annual basis, we received a quite interesting feedback, namely, if you look to short-term and mid-term challenges, that is horizontal and vertical axis, the competence topic became the highest, and that was new. In the previous year, and if you look to the time series, it was typically around quality and cost. Now it's competences. A lack of competence has dramatic impact on all of these other fields. Technical debt is an example. We have currently many customers running into an increasing amount of technical debt because the complexity is increasing. There is not enough people or competence to handle. There are savings, for instance, on traceability from the requirements to the test, but also for validation activities, insufficient test strategies. So problems accumulate, and that reduces the quality, but later on also your competitiveness. And this is a very important topic. So we want to deal also with this topic of competencies and how you can achieve better control of your systems, of your complexity, to deal and to mitigate this growing challenge with insufficient IT competences. Now, if we look into convergence and what it means, some of you might remember some 15, 20 years ago, we had a convergence of hardware and mechanics. That became mechatronics. Eventually, we only talk today about hardware, and what we mean is all what is mechanical, what is hardware. Now we see a next mega trend, if you want, which is that product and enterprise IT converge. And that was called, for instance, Fourth Industrial Revolution, Industry 4.0, ACES, which is autonomy, connectivity, ecology, and services. And we had several years ago published already some findings on this convergence. You see the article, it's accessible via IEEE software. And what we found, still valid today. Innovate the business. That's a key topic in this convergence because it's not anymore the software which is built in, it's the flexibility, the update of the software which makes the software more suitable for new payment schemes, for new user experiences on top of the hardware. It's what we call the software-defined X. This is not only the software-defined product, but also the software-defined company. Focus on value. Whatever we do must be a value in the eye of the beholder. That's our customer. Think global. Software is a global topic. And that is not because of cheap resources. That's certainly not our culture in Vector. It's about access to market. It's about culture. It's about a mix of different experiences. Deliver quality. I mean, that's basic, but it's even more important now because we have seen that with this track of the competence, there is a risk of insufficient quality. But since the competition in software-defined products is only a click away, once you deliver bad quality, it sticks to your branding, and therefore quality matters. And finally, well, that is obvious now, grow competencies, grow them continuously, and make sure that you balance. The engineers need to learn about computer science, informatics people have to learn about engineering, embedded. I just, before lunch, a discussion with a customer about real-time systems, and there was a supplier which came from IT, enterprise IT. They were not really used to real-time, and this has a partially very traumatic consequences because a hard real-time system is different from what we typically see in IT, and we have to master both, let's say, branches, product IT and enterprise IT. Now let's look to the Vector Forum, and we are this year in this 7 presentations. We have today number 5, which is software production for high performance cyberphysical systems with Goetz Dietrich of Zeiss. And it's every Wednesday in presence, 1 o'clock Central European Summer Time. That allows Americans to join in the morning and Asians to join in the evening. It will be recorded, and you will see more information on our YouTube channel and our other information. So this being said, and the topic now appearing, let me just summarize some observations for this theme of software production for high-performance cybersecurity systems. We will learn more once we have Goetz in this presentation. But we want to start with a survey, And the survey will be visible now online, so you can directly fill in. And the question would be, that's your software production aligns business, architecture, process, and organization. These 4 topics, are they sufficiently aligned, or do you see deficiencies? And if so, put a yes or no, and then you can submit the whole thing, and we'll then see some result after a while on that online screen. In the meantime, I will just summarize these 4 topics, notably because we had discussed these 4 topics also with Zeiss. Goetz will remember, and the background is very simple. It relates to what I said earlier. The major driver is business, and we want to stay in business. We have to stay in business with our growing high-performance cyber-physical systems. That's this converging system, because cyber-physical really means exactly this convergence. We need a suitable architecture. We need the right process, and not just call it agile and forget about anything else. It's always a very sophisticated relationship of different process steps, and adjust the organization, because many organizations have been organically grown and are not anymore suitable for this next level of high performance cyber-physical systems. And with that being said, I have a last look to the survey. We see a rough 50-50 split. So some would see the whole topic be handled well, the other half not sufficient. I'm sure we will learn more in the presentation of Goetz Dietrich. And here we are. Goetz, you are welcome, and I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you very much. And a warm welcome from myself as well. And thank you very much for attending the session. So the idea today is obviously first introducing myself so that you know who you're dealing with. And I have tried to find a simple summary statement for this. And I think what I would call myself is a dedicated software enthusiast and an agile digital leader. Yeah. And both of those because of obviously the education, my background in terms of the professional career, and obviously also then the experience that I'm currently going through within my current role. So everything started in the German Air Force very quickly, going from electrical engineering more into the software computing or development area, together with a diploma thesis that I had the chance to do in a Thayer School of Engineering in Dartmouth College, which is in Boston, and then obviously going through all different kinds of digital products and software development projects as part of the German Air Force or as part of the Airbus A400M. In terms of the new modern area transport aircraft, which requires, similar to our day-to-day car, lots of inputs in terms of data progression, software solutions. And then when I joined Zeiss in February 2017 as a team lead of software, then this obviously progressed. Yeah. And for a bit more than 3 years now, I have the chance to guide and support and lead the software activities within our strategic business unit of the semiconductor mask solutions. And the mask solutions, this is basically the picture that you see on the lower right side here. And this is a photomask that you see covered in what's called a Smith pot as a kind of protection from dust and etc. for transport. And what I'm going through today is basically first introduce you a little bit to Zeiss, yeah, and also then our unit where I'm responsible for, because I've just imagined that for most of you, you did not really connect software development very much to Zeiss. And I want to change this, and then obviously I go into which are the requirements and key informations that are necessary for software development within the SMS. Then briefly say why we think software development usually fails, or what is a big factor, and then to go on to our approach, before then switching over to the Q&A session like Christof just earlier introduced. So this slide is a bit tricky because the day that it's made public, it's already outdated because Zeiss as a group worldwide is growing faster than you can produce basically the slides. So we are currently already a little bit more than over 40,000 employees, worldwide locations, revenue starting. So that makes it basically a very interesting company to join in terms of everyone who's interested in technology, whether it's software, optics, mechatronics, sales, or anything else. The group, in terms of the overall portfolio, is then further on split down into what we call segments that are logically grouped. Yeah, so one that probably most of you know is the consumer markets, which is glasses, which is lenses for photography, filming, etc. Then there is also the area, the segment of medical technology, the segment of industrial quality and research, which covers also the classical microscopy from over 176 years ago when Zeiss first started his laboratory in Jena. And then there is the segment of semiconductor manufacturing technology, which includes the strategic business unit of semiconductor mask solutions, which is the one that I am responsible for the software. Some things that usually not all of the people know is that everyone literally is a bit dependent upon Zeiss and our work. At least everyone that's logged in today with a computer or a smartphone, because the Zeiss technology, at least of the semiconductor manufacturing technology, is implemented in the majority of microchips production worldwide currently, whether directly with our systems or whether indirectly with the optics being provided as part of the ASML lithography systems. We've also won different technical Oscars, the German Zukunftspreis from the federal minister. I can recommend that. Very interesting, at least I find. So it's enabling our daily work and life today. Then just a key information that I think is very important to putting things into perspective also for us. You could say that this slide, it's great, you know, a significantly growing, strong market of the semiconductor area. And I can only agree, but it is also very challenging because the speed of the approach here and the growth in the market is a very tough requirement. And you will see this in terms of time to market for new solutions. Yeah. Because if we don't support the time to market requirements that are very demanding, others in the worldwide connected market will do so, which means that they will not rely upon Zeiss solutions. And I'll come to this later on again. As I said, the next information is just giving you a bit of insight on what's the SMS for. So here displayed on the left, you can see basically the production process of a photomask. Yeah. From the pattern generation, obviously at the start here, unto the cleaning and then handing over into the wafer fabs, there is different steps involved into this. And in the majority of those steps, we provide solutions, being a component that is a combination of hardware and software integrated, rather complex, in order to support those production steps. And you can see the key elements here on the right. It is a very demanding business, as I said, in terms of the precision required. We are in the sub-nanometer area in terms of precision. Just to putting things into the perspective, this is 4,000 times thinner than our hairs. Yeah. And they are in a 24/7 operation because of the shortage. It's getting more and more into automation, IoT 4.0 things. Those kind of things require more the automation and integration. As you can imagine, since our customers handle with, for example, the iPhone 15, iPhone 16, so the new generation design data is very sensitive, hence often confidential. So just deriving the key information and drivers out of this and the boundary conditions for the software, as I said, it's always or almost always an integral part, combination hardware and software, to ensure operation, service, automation, and analysis of those images. We talk about something between 500,000 and several million lines of code in various programming languages. And please don't get me wrong, not in terms of a quality statement this is, but just as a fact. Yeah, and this is driven by a lot of legacy because most of our product lines exist already for more than 15 years, some already 32 years. So this is what you get in evolving systems. Yeah, and we have increasing digital options that try to also support the integration and the additional yield. Yeah. And what is also important, this is a team job. Yeah, so this is not only one developer within Zeiss or a development team within Zeiss. This requires also a number of partners, partner companies that develop open source components or firmware or join us in the software development in order to make sure that we have an integrated solution and that we can have the parallel supported release branches. So I think most of you or anyone has to deal with software and development knows this kind of scheme. Yeah. And usually during the development cycle, everything starts with a very large focus on business value. Yeah, so the feature, the functionality. Yeah, we need to show something that it works so that we can come into the discussion with customers. And there is rather little focus on the maintainability or the quality. Yeah, and during life, this is a constant discussion, and it moves on. And usually it declines, and somewhere it declines so much that it's almost impossible in order to add and develop the next feature and functionality. Yeah. So what you need to do is you need to somehow get into an area back where you can have a maintainability that's acceptable compared to the business value. And usually you do this through restructuring with new features and then applying something like refactorings and a constant Boy Scout rule. And this brings me basically to the next slide, saying that you always have architecture in your software products, yeah, whether they're planned or unplanned, yeah. And the argument maybe from the previous slide saying that we don't have the money, we can't afford to have a good architecture. I think Brian put it together very nicely. Say, the cost of bad architecture and restructuring, as I showed in the previous slide, is even much more and more difficult and puts you into a situation where you risk business, specifically in a very growing market. And this would be basically the picture, how to visualize that. So as a summary, the reasons for failure, or what you get, can be categorized usually in four aspects. Yeah, so you have the technical debt, which a lot of people know. Then you have the requirements debt, you have a documentation debt, and a test debt. And I would add a fifth one into this, and this is particularly after a joint work together with the colleagues from Vector Consulting, because Walter Bernett, the colleague from Vector, introduced that with us, and I still find it today, or we and the team still find it very, very suiting. You have the cultural depth also in what I would call traditional companies that come more from an optics or mechanics or mechatronics aspect, yeah, because they think differently and you approach software differently, and this is something that you need to overcome. So this is then the majority and the focus of today, where I would like to show and share some insights with you on our approach to do this. And this is basically a small slide, and I decided particularly to just take the extract from the analysis report that we have been receiving from Vector. So you could see here that we did an extensive, for us at Zeiss, external assessment, or if you would call it a joint assessment with the colleagues from Vector. after we did an internal assessment, and we internally call this open the machine room, yeah, from our software development fab. Because we said if you want to derive some measures, a change in an initiative, yeah, the essential thing is that you have a very transparent and open, stable basis, foundation, status quo for this. Yeah, if the input for this assessment and for the change initiatives is not honest and transparent, then very likely you're going to take the wrong message. Yeah. So we've performed this internal and external assessment, and then we've concluded on change initiatives and focused improvements together with our internal management support, which I am showing you here. And also this is again an extract from the slide that we have received from Vector. So the overall target obviously is that we want to prevent ourselves from failure, and that in the positive spirit, we would like to improve what we call the net feature capacity. So the new to the world aspect of capability within our software products that we can actually sell and market to our customers where they have an added value. Yeah. And the main message is basically from going through this is what I called earlier the cultural depth is that we need a mindset change, yeah, from the small scale manufacturing towards a large scale factory mindset. Then another message that was very evident to us, also visualized with a SWOT analysis, that we have a basically two-layered situation. Yeah. One cluster is around what we call the core software development. Yeah, so things that we can approach, whether it's the architecture, the process, the skill set, the competencies, the team setup of the software development teams themselves. However, equally important is what we call the SMS context for software development or for software technologies. Yeah, because we cannot successfully develop software just by ourselves. There is always dependencies externally, whether this is management, whether this is product management, customer sales, whether this is anything else in terms of the supply chain management also. Yeah. And we have also a very high amount due to the legacy, understandable, yes, but a very high amount of technical debt that prevents us from focusing on innovation. Yeah, and that requires immediate action to master the issues burn down of the software that we have. And this is then the next slide, trying to show how to overcome this or how to deal with this. Yeah. So you basically, if you make a comparison, this is like you're trying to run Apollo 13 mission and SpaceX mission at the same time. Yeah. So on the one hand, you're trying to increase now significantly the customer satisfaction, yeah, by taking away those issues that prevent uptime, etc. And the other one is that you significantly need to improve effectiveness and efficiency, yeah, and enable future growth. And this is a bit of a stretch, yeah. So the things that are absolutely necessary in terms of resolving the issues is executive management support, very good leadership, and transparent and cohesive communication. Because this includes not only the software development, but also then sales, product management in the headquarters in Germany, and equally in the shared local service centers that we have in Asia, America, etc., with the customers today. And on the other side, and in parallel, you need to identify the improvements as a stable basis in order to strengthen the software organization, to strengthen the ownership and the digital culture, yeah, so that you can also foster the software excellence in order to then have a positive impact on the performance of our solutions. Yeah, we need to make sure that everything that we develop and create is, in terms of the continuous development cycle. So this is what we focused on, the wording closed loop DevOps, including digital twins. Yeah, so that we don't have a potentially shippable release that later on we put 6-8 weeks into a manual testing phase. And the fourth, but equally important aspect is what we focused on: economies of scale, so leveraging the SMS wide scaling, which is also a bit of a tricky focus, because with the time to market requirements, the very strong ones that I introduced to you earlier, if you focus on a single product, rather than scaling effects across product lines, you are much faster. And if you try to align, you have additional stakeholders, additional communication, and potentially you miss those time to market. So it's a constant value. So our approach was obviously to say, yes, we have separate goals and a separate approach and separate aspects that are essential to do this. So we were managing two distinct measures at the same time with a different setup. And I'm not going to focus too much on the issues burned down in this matter, in this instance here, because the latter one, the second one, refers more also to the topic of converging system, as introduced earlier by Christof. However, if you have any kind of questions, I think you either approach the colleagues from Vector or also myself, and I'm more than happy to answer you on that question that you have. But in the coming slides, then we focus on the second aspect that I showed to you on the right side, and we're going into basically the four major contributors for us that we need to overcome in order to challenge the ineffectiveness and inefficiency. And I'm going through them from the left to right just briefly. The first one perfectly matches to the highest voted currently. It goes into competency. We called it experience and excellence here. Of the workforce, and it is very evident. The more complex your software products or solutions get, the more it is a driver in terms of operational or business success, the more experienced and excellent development teams you have. And it's not something like 10 to 15%. It is really a factor that makes the difference here. So this is very important for us to make sure that we focus on getting the right knowledge in to developing our products. And whether this is internal developers or external workforce does not really make a difference here. The second aspect is requirements engineering. And it's also very simple, and I'm quite sure that most of you have heard this, and there's a lot of nodding now for people that have, requirements engineering for software products. You can only be effective if you do have the right requirements from the very beginning. Because if you don't have very clear requirements, you develop something, you deliver it to the customer, and then the customer gets your feedback that, this is not really working. And then you try to identify through lack analysis, error analysis, maybe the customer is unhappy, all of those kind of things, how exactly to change this and how to now redevelop or refactor the solution that you have already done. And sometimes there is also architectural changes needed in their interface or whatever. And I think one of the good examples, one for the examples that have a biggest impact is security. If you use technology that has a security flaw, and later on you get that feedback that, our security requirement was to be compliant to A and B, then you have to reinvent everything or redevelop everything using different technology stacks, which can be very cost effective. And again, we're talking not about 10 to 15%, we're talking about factors here. The third category is what we call the testing overhead. And it's not only the testing overhead in terms of, UI tests or manual tests are much more expensive or are much more prone to errors and changes. It's also that the further down in this pyramid you are, the earlier in your development cycle you get feedback on bugs, errors, mistakes in your software. And again, the earlier you get that feedback, the easier it is to influence, so you're on the right side. Yeah. So if you have a lot of manual test overhead at the very end of your software development cycle, this is a very high burden on the efficiency. And the last one is what I introduced to you earlier as the economies of scale. And again, thank you very much here to Walter Bernhardt and Vector for giving us the hint and also the model there. Many times reused already within the company now. The thing is relatively easy. Yeah, if you focus for products that have some reuse or are similar, focus on a platform or a stable, mature modules that you can reuse. Yeah, obviously you have an on-top effort in order to make them reusable. Yeah, or scalable. However, this effort, if you're doing it right, is much less compared to 5, 6, 7 times doing all of those centralized modules, product specific and product centric in a monolithic code. Yeah? And doing a proper variant management gives you also a very high leverage on the topic of efficiency. So taking all of this into consideration, then what came out of this is our strategic change initiative, which we call SAS 25. Yeah. And no, it's not software as a service, as probably most of you have connected this abbreviation now. However, we've used this on purpose. Yeah. So we've used this abbreviation on purpose. However, it's connected to the 4 categories shown here in the pyramid of stabilization, acceleration, automation, and last but not least, simplification. Why that? Because we've seen that if you want to address a mindset or a cultural change within the company, within a larger area, where the majority of people are not from within your software and don't connect really to the details, they need a bit, something, pictures, a word, an abbreviation to connect it to. And again, since we've already been driving this now for several months through the organization, the majority of people know at least that, SAS 2025, this is the software focused change initiative within the SMS. Yeah. And even if people don't know exactly the details, then this is a starting point for the discussion, and you can go further into the details and explain as much as you want. So this is the target, to get this large-scale software factory in place, to make sure that for this growth that I did show you earlier in the semicon market, 2030 and beyond, we're ready to support everything that comes in there. And the idea is, as I've shown you earlier, have a change initiative, including executive support, that's commonly shared within the whole organization, and to achieve a joint end-to-end improvement in order to bring basically our software development to the next level. Yeah. And I'm just going through in the last minutes of the presentation through the steps basically that we believe are required one after another in order to arrive to the top, where we can have finally a lot of focus on the innovation aspects. And the first one and the basis here is we need to get in control of the maturity, in terms of getting rid of the problems that we have. Because every time that we focus on a discussion, on a bug, on a maturity problem, on an inavailability with customers, this requires a lot of effort and resources and prevents you in the same time from preparing for the future. Yeah. So we have installed software technical key accounts from within the R&D software management team to directly lead and guide communications and derive actions to burn down the software issues jointly with all of the stakeholders. Yeah. And this has been very effective, I need to say, and surprisingly faster than we thought in the beginning. and we've already arrived from, let's say, all-time bad for our lead customer to all of their software KPIs being green for the 3rd month in a row now already. Yeah. And then the second one is that we need to do our homework, which is obviously test coverage, coding guidelines, put all of these in place, automate it, make sure that we address that quality is a customer value within the organization, and then make a proper configuration management to avoid that, we have variants that we don't really understand, that we don't really know where to test against. Once we have this, then the next step that we believe that we need to go is that we want to be faster and more efficient, so that we have faster customer releases that we can submit. Currently, we are more or less on a quarterly release cycle, and we can further bring this down by improving our operational way of working, and by fostering DevOps, continuous integrations, pipelines, by also enhancing our testing into more customer-centric, and obviously making sure that we have improved internal and external capacity available to support exactly this acceleration. And once we've done that, our next step would to focus more into automation, because then everyone knows this that has to deal with software development nowadays as well. You don't run software development with processes, with paper checklists, etc. There is lots of very good tooling available that allows automation of all of this. We have more than 40 hours already overnight that with the build pipelines are run in terms of tests. We have simulations also, and by improving this with digital twins from the installed base, you can also include this and have basically every morning a statement on the quality. And with configuration management, we go more into an iOS update process rather than a very complex manual error-prone one that maybe we have the tendency for today. And with new technology like Docker, Kubernetes, and all those things, we also would like to improve our technical excellence on this. And last but not least, the icing on the cake, or the top of the pyramid here, is once we've stabilized all of this, once we've made sure that we are faster, then we would like to really leverage the economies of scale with those stable, mature modules that are being automated, so that we can have a simplification in user experience or usability experience, that we can have a simplification in terms of the automation integration, more towards what we would call a mask shop ecosystem. And before I close or hand over to the Q&A sessions, I would like to close the statement with our vision for what the SMS software development in 2025 is. We would basically very easily, sounds here in one statement, have just very reliable 100% of our software installations successfully and performed or delivered according to the promised schedules that our customers expect. And with that, I hope pretty much that I've been on time. Thank you very much for the listening, and I'm looking forward to the questions and to the discussions.
Thanks, Goetz, for this very thorough presentation with lots of insight. And well, as always, time versus content. I appreciate the content, and that's important. We still have some time for the questions. And let me just stay with one which relates a little bit to your last slide with this very ambitious goal of the 100%, but probably also to earlier part when you talked about software excellence. And that is, how do you actually foster software excellence to fuel business performance of Zeiss? I think you had a sentence like that. So in other words, how do you relate measures to achieve what is software excellence, and how would you label the software excellence as having improved?
Yeah, very, very good question. And one thing that I did not pick on here is the BAPO approach, basically, that you also referred to. Yeah. And the organization goes exactly into this. We have in Zeiss what we call technical ladder. Yeah. So we know that we depend and rely a lot on innovation and technical excellence. Yeah. And we have a very good, excellent staffing and competence when it goes to optics. However, for software and the required competencies for software, we don't have this. And we have installed measures in order to exactly coach, mentor, foster technical excellence also for software. And this is very, measurable, because you can count from, okay, we did have 0 people within the Zeiss technical ladder, yeah, and then a year later we have 5, yeah, in the first step, and a year later we have 2 in the second one and 10 in the first one. Yeah, so like this, we have derived very specific and particular measures of identifying our personnel with potential and doing that. So that's the internal perspective. And the external is that we have established a dedicated software supply chain management, and that we are in discussions and launched meetings with our partners and suppliers as well to do a similar approach there.
Okay. There was another one which get most votes in the meantime, which is about the different type of, call it debt or technical debt. You've shown this 4+1, and how do you measure these different types of debt which you show here, like requirements or cultural? And can you give, maybe in a nutshell, for 3-4 of them, a hint how you control or reduce it?
Yeah. And obviously I can, and this is a very interesting topic personally also for me. Yeah. So we have not really reinvented the wheel. Yeah. The first starting point was some very good KPIs that were proposed by you and your colleague Walter Bernert. Yeah. And we've taken this basically as a basis, and also looked into what's available as state of the art, maybe from Microsoft or McKinsey. And what we looked into and what we have basically tailored for us is then a development index. Yeah, DVI was referred to one of the other slides as well. And if you search the internet, you can have a look at this, and which gives us a heat map on exactly all of those aspects here. Yeah, defining criteria per team, per product, per module, identifying the status quo currently today, and then we redo that basically every half year in order to see whether our measures that we've taken and the change initiatives have had an improved success or not. Yeah. So for technical debt, this is relatively easy, and we're running SonarCube, static code analysis, and you have all of different factors in there. Yeah. For cultural, that is a bit different because you have to rely on expert judgment. Yeah. But this is an approach also easily. You can have interviews with both parts that are required, from one within the software, from one without the software, and you very easily get the feedback whether the situation has improved or not. Yeah, and so on. I don't know whether this answers the question, but that just gives you an insight on how we approach this.
Yeah, I think the important message is, on the one side, you need to measure it. I mean, you came already early on, said the topic of KPI is important, and it is, because if you don't have a yardstick, you can always have this gut feeling our software is good enough, but you have no idea really until it's maybe too late. And this is exactly why we talk about this debt as something which accumulates often silently, and then you suddenly are strangulated. And the other one was not only to repeatedly measure, but to have really these different dimensions. You need individual measures. You gave the example for the technical debt. You gave the example for the culture. One you can measure more with a yardstick. The other one needs expert judgment. But I think we got an idea how you approach it and that you take it serious. And that's key. It was also when we discussed it last year. There's another question about the digital twin topic. You mentioned, I think, in the Outlook, does tests of a digital twin really substitute the test of the actual machine? Motivation for this question, and what we also learned in the meantime, I mean, model-based system engineering and all these topics try since long to have this closed loop of model and product and keep them consistent, which is hardly achieved, and that gives you a wrong, let's say, perception in terms of what is in the model and what might be verified in the model would really be the reality. Now with the digital twin could be same topic. So how do you keep that consistent, and how do you ensure that you have sufficient verification validation, even if you would run it on the digital twin?
Yeah. Again, very good and interesting question. However, I'm afraid I'm struggling with the answer in terms of providing you really something that you can grasp, because it's very tricky and challenging. Yeah. So the first thing that we've tried is to say, digital twin for our whole system is probably something that we will never really achieve. Yeah. But then we asked ourselves the question, do we really need to tackle the whole system, or is it okay if we focus on key components or modules of the system which have the biggest gaps, so which have the largest immaturities? And this was basically the first approach. Yeah, we just depicted on which component is root cause for the majority of defects and problems. Yeah. For example, this would be the handling system. Yeah, so getting the photomask into the system, turning it, making sure that we have the right thermalization and stuff like that. If that component is, so then we developed the digital twin for the handling system and for the interfaces there, and obviously together with the software team, that was required for the development of the software for the handling system itself. And they constantly develop not only then the software for the handling system, but also directly with it, then the software for the digital twin. And we qualify it in terms of exactly, is it a right picture prior to rolling it out? Yeah. But this is only for some aspects what we've achieved so far. The majority, to be very frank here, is still open and ongoing. Yeah, and maybe hardware in the loop would be a better wording for this, but we wanted particularly to have something really challenging for us because our machines are very complex, very expensive, and because they're in the clean room, etc., the time that we have on those for testing are very expensive also. And if you would have everything in what we call digital twins, this is much of a chance. Yeah, and this is more capable also in terms of organizational management with your support for executive, etc. So yes, for people that know what digital twins are, this is more as a vision, North Star, rather than realistic.
Okay. One last question, which gets more into the culture topic. With Zeiss being really a stronghold of people from science, from very different disciplines who are really at the leading edge in your field, how do you establish an understanding? I simplify the question a bit. How do you establish an understanding of what needs to be done to improve the software? In other words, I guess there's a difference in terms of education, in terms of culture and thinking and mindsets between what you have as scientists and what you see also from a software development perspective. And how do you get this together?
Yeah, there's different parts to the answer. Yeah, so the first one is, luckily, yeah, in my eyes, it's what we call a mega trend. Yeah, it's not particular for SMS. This is valid for almost everyone at Zeiss. Yeah, so it means that we have launched activities as part of our strategy. Yeah, at the very highest level with the Zeiss group, then flow down into the segments. Yeah, and it's called Agenda 25, where a digital mindset, digital leadership is one key aspect amongst others. Yeah. So every leader, no matter whether he's in science, whether he's in sales, has some kind of training education for the new wording, different approaches, mindset. Then in the next step, obviously, you have a flow down. We have a DTO circle established across the segments that address exactly those kind of topics of architecture, joint processes, where do we need to do, how can we leverage economies of scale. And then on the third level below, it's a lot of discussion, communication, convincing, showing, selling, just like I do today. Of the leadership team of the software, explaining, answering questions, and also this, I called it opening the machine room. This is something that fosters trust and understanding. If you say, look, it's not a black box, it's no magic, for you that you don't understand, come in and we'll try to explain you as much as you want. So this would be the threefolded answer to your question. And because it's more and more, and we also are growing in terms of the community, it will be more and more present also in the minds and understanding of everyone.
Yeah, and it's a journey. I mean, we had also this discussion last year, and I think it's growing. But I think the key is really to understand that any company today is to some degree a software company, and I think you do a lot in order to facilitate this understanding, which does not mean experts like in physics or so have to give up their expertise. It's more that they have understanding of the interdependencies. Thanks a lot again. And let me go back into the closing. Time is running. Where do we go from here? I mean, it was a wonderful presentation. Thanks, Goetz Dietrich of Zeiss for this insights, what's ongoing, how do you really achieve software excellence, on what is your way forward. We will have in the next week, from this perspective of convergence, also a presentation which looks into, well, a related topic, how to improve the software stack. We have Linda Gaines presenting about code quality assessment, something which Goetz just mentioned, which is the technical analysis of the software. You mentioned static analysis with different tools, and there's also architecture analysis, etc. So that's the scope of next week's presentation. You have showed very well with this pyramid approach, the business perspective of the convergence. You referred also to the BAPU, which has this business aspect, the value, both internal as well as external. The globalization being yourself a lead supplier, to put it like that, on a very key market for pretty much all industries worldwide. And this is a true global business where you have to deal with all these different needs of the semiconductor fabs and manufacturers. Deliver quality. Of course, this is a real high cost and high value business. And finally, also to grow the competences was just the answer of your to the last question. Thanks again, Goetz Dietrich, for the presentation. For those of you who want already to look forward into 24, we will look more into technology deployment and innovation deployment. This will be again in May, June 24. Same approach. You can already register, then you get the invitations in due time. And for now, and just in due time after the 60 minutes, I thank everybody, those who joined online, for these wonderful questions, for good interaction, for those who join offline, that you hopefully got away with a lot of new learnings, and certainly to Goetz Dietrich for this excellent presentation, and hope we all benefit from it to improve our software. I think there was something to learn for all of us, from technical topics to culture topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much.